Breaking news. French president's comments spark diplomatic firestorm. Protests erupt outside the Australian embassy in Manila. Tokyo scrambles to contain fallout from minister's gaffe. In 2025, a series of careless words from world leaders targeted the Philippines, a nation many underestimated. But this time, the Philippines refused to be belittled. The world was about to learn the true meaning of national pride and unity. 5 leaders, 5 insults, and a nation that turned every slight into a lesson in respect. This is how the Philippines reminded the world. Dignity is not reserved for the powerful. The story began in the vibrant port city of Marseille, where the European Naval Forum was underway. Diplomats, military leaders, and officials from across the continent gathered to discuss maritime security and cooperation, their national flags fluttering in the Mediterranean breeze. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation as Europe sought to present a united front in an increasingly uncertain world. French President Jacques Morel, eager to assert France's leadership, took the stage with confidence. In a moment meant to rally his European peers, he made a careless remark, dismissing the Philippine Navy as just a Coast Guard playing battleship. The words, intended as a light jest, instead revealed a deep undercurrent of condescension. Within hours, Morel's comment had exploded across social media in Manila. News outlets replayed the clip on a loop, and Filipinos from all walks of life took to their phones to express outrage and disbelief. The digital world lit up with heated debates, memes, and calls for accountability. For many Filipinos, the insult cut deep. It wasn't just a slight against their navy. It was a painful reminder of centuries-old colonial arrogance, a wound that had never fully healed. The president's words echoed the dismissive attitudes of the past, stirring up national pride and indignation. The Philippine government responded swiftly, summoning the French ambassador to the Department of Foreign Affairs. In a tense meeting, officials condemned the president's remarks, demanding an official explanation and a show of respect for the country's armed forces. Hashtags like #French arrogance and #Respect our Navy surged to the top of global trends. Boycotts against French products and businesses quickly gained momentum as Filipinos and their supporters around the world called for economic action. The backlash was swift, organized, and impossible to ignore. The consequences were immediate. A major submarine deal, years in the making and worth billions, was abruptly frozen. Negotiations that had once seemed routine now ground to a halt as trust between the two nations evaporated overnight. The message from Manila was clear and resolute. You do not insult our sailors and expect business as usual. The Philippine Navy, once dismissed, now stood as a symbol of national unity and resilience. In Paris, Morel's office scrambled to contain the fallout. Spokespersons tried to downplay the incident, insisting it was a misunderstanding. But the damage only grew as the story dominated headlines and diplomatic channels buzzed with concern. Across Southeast Asia, leaders watched the unfolding crisis with keen interest. The Philippines, often overshadowed on the world stage, now stood firm, refusing to back down or accept empty apologies. Protests outside French embassies continued for weeks. Economic ties between France and the Philippines soured, with trade numbers plummeting. Morel's approval ratings at home took a nosedive, and the once promising submarine deal officially collapsed. Refusing to be isolated, the Philippines turned to new partners. Defense agreements were signed with other nations, and foreign naval officers visited Manila, eager to strengthen ties and show support. Under mounting international and domestic pressure, President Morel was forced to issue a public apology. But the damage was done. His reputation, both at home and abroad, was left in tatters. France learned a costly lesson. Careless words can cost billions, and the Filipino spirit is not to be underestimated. The world watched as a small nation stood tall, defending its honor and reshaping alliances. This was just the beginning. The diplomatic shockwaves rippled far beyond France and the Philippines, changing the calculus of international relations. The first domino had fallen, and the world braced for what would come next. As France reeled from its own crisis, Japan found itself stumbling into diplomatic turmoil of its own, catching both its leaders and citizens off guard. At a high-profile Tokyo conference, Defense Minister Ko Nakamura made a statement that would soon echo across the region. He suggested that the Philippines should avoid provocation in the West Philippine Sea, a comment that, on the surface, seemed like a call for calm, but carried a much heavier implication. For many Filipinos, Nakamura's words felt like a betrayal. Instead of standing with a longtime ally facing aggression, Japan appeared to be shifting blame onto the Philippines, as if they were responsible for the rising tensions. The sense of disappointment was palpable, especially given the history of cooperation and trust between the two nations. The Philippine government wasted no time in voicing its grave disappointment. Officials issued strong statements, emphasizing that they expected support, not criticism, from their Japanese partners. Behind closed doors, frustration and anger simmered. Diplomats struggled to contain the fallout, but the damage was already spreading. Outside the Japanese embassy in Manila, protests erupted. Demonstrators held signs and waved old photographs, invoking memories of World War II and the painful legacy of Japanese occupation. The wounds of history, never fully healed, were suddenly reopened. Realizing the gravity of his words, Nakamura attempted to clarify his statement, insisting he meant no offense. But the phrase "avoid provocation" had already struck a nerve, and apologies could not erase the sting. In Japan, the backlash was immediate and intense. Newspapers ran bold headlines, and citizens watched the unfolding controversy with a mix of shock and concern. Many questioned how such a misstep could happen at such a critical time. Opposition parties seized the moment, accusing Nakamura of undermining a vital alliance and jeopardizing Japan's credibility on the world stage. The criticism was relentless, both in parliament and in the media. Under mounting pressure, and with his position now untenable, Nakamura resigned within a week. His departure was swift, but the consequences of his words lingered. Decades of carefully built trust between Japan and the Philippines were fractured in a single moment of arrogance and misjudgment. The alliance, once seen as unbreakable, now seemed fragile. In response, the Philippines began to diversify its security partnerships, reaching out to new allies and strengthening ties with other nations. The message was clear: true allies stand together, especially in times of crisis. Nakamura's fall served as a stark warning to leaders everywhere. Words, once spoken, can break even the strongest bonds and alter the course of history. The alliance between Japan and the Philippines would never be the same. Trust, once broken, is not easily restored. Another leader down, another lesson learned on the world stage. The political fallout rippled far beyond Tokyo and Manila, serving as a cautionary tale for governments everywhere. As the world watched, the Philippines refused to be sidelined, determined to chart its own course and remind everyone that respect and solidarity are the true foundations of any alliance. Next, Australia. Senator Troy Wallace, in a Senate debate, called the Philippines little more than a banana republic. The chamber fell silent. The insult was rooted in colonial history and exploitation. Outrage erupted. The Philippine ambassador condemned the remarks as racist and ignorant. Filipino Australians and allies protested nationwide. Wallace doubled down on TV but misjudged the public mood. Business leaders warned of economic fallout. Trade talks were postponed. Wallace's own party turned on him. Donors fled, polls collapsed. Facing a no-confidence motion, Wallace resigned in disgrace. His slur ended his career and became a lesson. Colonial language has no place in today's world. The Philippines stood tall, and Australia learned the cost of bigotry. Another insult, another downfall. The world was listening. In the UK, Prime Minister Elizabeth Harrow, under pressure, announced stricter immigration policies. She singled out the Philippines, saying Britain must move away from low-skilled workers from countries like the Philippines. The backlash was immediate. Filipino NHS workers, the backbone of British healthcare, were outraged. The Filipino Nurses Association issued a powerful open letter. Media and politicians demanded an apology. Stories of Filipino dedication filled the headlines. In the Philippines, the insult cut deep. Hashtags "How I Proudly Filipino" and "Thank You, Filipino Nurses" trended globally. Harrow's initial defense failed. Under mounting pressure, she issued a televised apology. Her authority was permanently damaged. The low-skilled comment haunted her tenure. The episode became a warning: never underestimate the value of compassion and hard work. The UK learned that respect for workers is non-negotiable. Another leader humbled, another lesson for the world. The Philippines' dignity shone brighter than ever. The final insult in this tense standoff came from China, a nation known for its calculated moves and measured words. But this time, the world watched as the stakes were raised to a new level. General Zhang Weiyu, a high-ranking Chinese military official, issued a bold and provocative statement. He threatened to tow away the BRP Sierra Madre, a rusting but resolute ship grounded on the second Thomas Shoal, a symbol of Philippine sovereignty and defiance in the face of overwhelming odds. This was not just a diplomatic warning, it was a direct threat, an act of war in all but name. The world held its breath as Chinese ships loomed ever closer, their intentions clear, their presence menacing. The Philippine president, resolute and unwavering, addressed the nation and the world. "We will not be bullied," he declared, his voice echoing the determination of an entire people. "We will not yield a single inch of our territory." These words reverberated across continents, sparking a wave of support. The world rallied behind the Philippines, recognizing the courage it took to stand up to a giant. The United States, bound by a decades-old defense treaty, reaffirmed its unwavering commitment to defend the Philippines. Allies from around the globe condemned China's threat, making it clear that aggression would not go unanswered. In a powerful show of solidarity, naval vessels from several nations moved closer to the contested waters. Warships sailed in tight formation, sending a message that unity was stronger than intimidation. China's attempt to intimidate its neighbor had backfired spectacularly. Instead of sowing fear, it sparked outrage and resistance, both at home and abroad. Chinese officials, once confident, now appeared uneasy as the world's eyes turned toward them. The Philippines stood firm, its naval crew resolute on the deck of the Sierra Madre. At international summits, China found itself increasingly isolated, its flag conspicuously absent from key discussions. In a stunning turn, General Zhang vanished from public view, silenced by his own government for a blunder that had united the world against them. His empty chair became a symbol of failed intimidation. The bully's threat had only strengthened the resolve of the Philippines and its allies. Filipino soldiers stood prouder than ever, their determination mirrored by the support of friends near and far. The world saw in this moment the true power of unity and courage. Nations that once hesitated now stood shoulder to shoulder, proving that collective resolve could overcome even the most daunting threats. The year's final chapter was written, not with fear, but with defiance and hope. In the streets of Manila, people cheered, waving their flags high, proud of their nation's stand. The Philippines had turned every insult, every threat, into a rallying cry for freedom and dignity. The spirit of the people was unbreakable, their unity unshakable. The world learned a vital lesson: never underestimate a nation's will to defend its dignity. In the face of adversity, the Philippines and its allies had shown that courage and unity could change the course of history. The lesson was complete. In 2025, 5 leaders underestimated the Philippines and paid the price. The Philippines showed that respect is earned through courage and unity, not power. Each insult became a lesson, each backlash a turning point. The world learned that dignity is a power no nation can take away. Which leader made the worst mistake? Share your thoughts below. Let the world know. The Filipino spirit cannot be silenced.